Oh, I've seen that.
Every year they're spraying on him, and then in the summer, combs and walls.
They're aware of
No, it's so long. I'm starting to do the Carl
I got me, yes.
No, I'm not. I'm probably supposed to be down here. I'd rather sit up there. I'd like to call this meeting to order, please. This is a meeting for the discussion of the makeup of the Public Works Board. Could we have roll call, please?
Mr. Collins? Mr. Frost? Mr. Fairchild?
Here.
Mr. Engel?
Yeah, here.
Mr. Fisher?
Here.
Mr. Jaeger?
Here.
Mr. Plummer?
Here.
Mr. Snyder?
Here.
Ms. Wilkins?
I'm assuming that they're not getting rid of schools. The first order of business then is, this is a public discussion brought about, there was a discussion at the last Public Works meeting on changing the makeup of the Public Works Board. So this is the opportunity for the public to discuss this before the commissioners discuss it. So I would like you to notice the 2 minutes if you would, and keep your comments within that range. And having said that, I guess a raise of hands on who wants to start the comments. Having said that, I guess we will.
Mark, you don't mind? I'm sorry. I thought there might be some other comments. I don't have a comment only because as a citizen, I looked at the agenda for today, and it talked about, it was very fuzzy. It was just a few words saying changing in some manner the makeup of the board. So would it be possible to explain what's going on, because it's not clear to a lot of us? Thank you.
Mr. Fisher brought up a proposal to explore the possibility to replace some of the commissioners with other elected officials, not specified, not number specified, just to look at.
Would it remain a board like the Public Works Board as it is now?
The Public Works Board, by statute, is required to be made up of 5, 7, or 9 members. Muskegon County has chosen 9 to give the most representation. To my knowledge, since this board has been enacted, it has been a function of the board chair to nominate commissioners who are elected by the people in the districts to serve on this board, and then the county board votes that up or down. And that has been, as far as I know, the system. Personally, I'm not aware of problems with that. I think it's good that the public should have the ability to get rid of a commissioner. But Dave brought forth a suggestion, and so we're having a public meeting if there's support for that. Did I explain it correctly? Or?
Yeah, I did.
I'm sorry, Jim?
You know, I was a real advocate for taking a relook. I was thinking of three things with that. One is that we could get the history from day one of the public works board, so we know where we've been. Secondly, I'd like a legal and a financial status, so we know exactly where we are. And thirdly, my hope was we could brainstorm to see where we're going. Things are changing, and I think we need to be prepared for the future. I don't recall being an advocate or calling this meeting to necessarily change any board member. But I think with the new commission coming on, who sits on it, how many of us really have the knowledge, A, of the history of our financial and legal standing, and others, I don't know who could do the history. I would imagine, Barb, you're chairman, you could take us back, or Dave's been on it.
You will recall though, Jim, that I asked you 3 times to state what you wanted and you wouldn't say it.
And I did think that was emailed to you. Our legal and financial, we have 2 different types of ponds out there. We have some things going on in the water here. We have some municipalities attached to this that I think we all better understand where they're at. And then, most importantly, let's look to where we want to be in the future. And this was emailed, this was sent to the chairman of the board, I believe. I'm sure you got a copy of that too. But that's where I was hoping to go.
That's not the question that's being addressed here.
Excuse me, could I just add, what is the proposal? That's what I'm confused about.
The original discussions that I brought to the table was the act itself, Act 185, which gives the county the permission or the right to establish a board of public works, and it's essentially a financing tool for utilities throughout the community. The membership is discussed in the act, and the membership is spelled out, like Mark was saying, 5, 7, or 9 members. And then it goes on to say is that the board members may be county commissioners. It doesn't say they shall be county commissioners, which leaves it somewhat open for discussion. The discussion that I hope we have today is one of a healthy interaction between not only our board members but also between the board members and the public about what the function of this board is and what it does. And Marv is correct. I mean, the agenda item basically just says the makeup of it. And well, it's that simple. The county board appoints it once a year. Once it's appointed, then you pick a chair and vice chair, and then we do our business throughout the year. Commissioner Berezinski brings up some points that, really go back to some of the discussions that I've had is who are the stakeholders of this board? We've been referred to a lot of times as a committee, and we're not a committee, we are a board established by the full board under the auspices of Act 185. And with that establishment, we have certain powers that the other committees don't have. And most of those deal with financing and entering into intergovernmental agreements to support water, sewer, solid waste, which is what we're involved in right now.
But is there a proposal? I mean, you're talking change.
No.
Just to review then the current
The intent
makeup.
of this discussion, the intent of this meeting is to have a healthy discussion. There is no control on this board about what may or may not happen in January. That control lies with the full board. We can't pick ourselves or whatever it might be. It's the full board does that. Just the discussion prior to what happens in January, I felt was very pertinent to have, at least at this time.
Thank you.
If I might clarify, Jim, the county board does all matters financial for the they're responsible, they are the financial entity that's responsible to do this. So this is a statutory board that's been put in place by the state to offer suggestions to.
But it was my understanding that you don't need to have confirmation by the full County Board of Commissioners when you make, when the Public Works Board makes a decision. Is that am I incorrect in that?
No, in some cases, no.
Okay.
And I'll defer to Ted, but if the county board determines that this issue you could make an answer to, then you can, until the county board says no, you can't make that issue, and you can't do that anymore.
Okay.
I mean, it's like saying, am I correct, Ted? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You know, I don't mean to disagree, but I think it's a little more detailed than that. Let's go to what the county's responsibility are. We have two types of bonds that we have floated, and they have different restrictions to them. And I surely want to know just where they are, who has them, and these are in conjunction with townships. I want to make sure all those townships are solid. But there are two different types, and I think Mr. Ossenbeck could probably enlighten us a little bit on that. But I would like to get the particulars. What have we paid off? What types of bonds are they? Who sits on the obligation? In the end, we probably do, but our health, we should be making sure that the who are involved with us are also in good shape.
How would
Staff has those abilities to do that for you.
And that's, again, part of the email, but,
Yeah, but
one by the
you
staff.
went to the wrong place, John. The staff is what provides that.
I think we want to staff. But
could I just ask
get through Dave
a
Fish.
question in reference to what Commissioner Darazinski just said? How would this proposed change address the points that you just made? Or
Let me let Ted speak to this because
Just to reply, if I understand it, there is no proposed change. This is an opportunity to discuss the possibility of a different composition of the board. As Mr. Fisher's indicated, the composition is statutory in number. The only mandatory member is the drain commissioner. The statute that goes on to provide that commissioners may be members. And they always have this in partial response to Commissioner Darazinski. There are outstanding bonds. There are both revenue and basic general obligation bonds. In both cases, even though issued through the Public Works Board, they tend to be backed by the full credit of the county. And I'm not prepared to list out all of them because they're quite few. They tend to all follow that framework.
I'm sure like to understand what they all are, but apparently we've had some recent increases to the SAFI and other reasons. I think all our municipalities in working with us on this also should have that full understanding of those general obligation and those revenue bonds. And when they're coming up, how they're coming up, are we capable? I realize that we're on the hook. I just think it would behoove us all to have that knowledge. I'm one of the longest serving board members, and I don't have that knowledge at my fingertips. And do you, Martin?
no, I was going to say someone else wanted to speak if you would.
If I recall correctly, and you have all good, valid questions that you want information on, but when we decided to go along and have this, it was to get the input of the public of what they thought, how, you know, if what we do as a Public Works Board was working for them. If I believe that was the whole issue, wasn't it, John?
Well, as the one who made the motion, I will try to give you what my thought was. And my thought was that it's worthwhile having a discussion because not only is the county on the hook for all of these bonds, but the municipalities, townships, they also are on the hook for many of these bonding issues, at least in part. Ultimately, it boils down to whether the county, in its obligation of full faith and credit, would stand behind the bonds, and it does. I was interested in trying to discern whether or not it might be worthwhile to get the involvement of some of the other entities in the operation of the Department of Public Works. There's been some criticism in the past that when rates were set for water or wastewater, all of a sudden the county board, through the Department of Public Works, changed that. And my understanding was, or at least I've heard, that some of the townships, some of the municipalities were not happy with the fact that they were not taken into consideration in setting those rates. We have a situation in which there may be the possibility of default on some of the rates and some of the bonds, and the county is going to have to assume that responsibility. My thought was that it might be worthwhile having a discussion as to whether or not it would involve, it would make sense to involve, I should say, make sense to involve some of the municipalities on the board of the Department of Public Works, simply for their input. While it's true that we can all reach out, as a matter of fact, a lot of times that just doesn't occur. And I happen to think that we have a good example of a cooperative operation, and that's in the Northside Water Policy Board, in which the townships and the county commissioners operate together. And my thought was that it's worthwhile having the discussion as to whether or not the county board ought to be made up of, the Department of Public Works Board ought to be made up of the drain commissioner and all county board members. Because I go back to the water wars, when the county said, irrespective of what the townships wish, or irrespective of what the municipalities wish, we're going to put water through here. And the result of that was a delay in getting water to some areas where it could have otherwise been accommodated. And the resultant solution to that was the creation of the Northside Water Policy Board, which involves input from the townships as well as the county. So that was the reason that I thought it might make some sense to simply have an open discussion and find out whether the townships are interested. They might not even be interested in serving, but I thought we ought to find out. I thought we ought to find out if there's anyone else that might be interested in serving. I'm not out to change it. I don't have a preconceived idea that it ought to be changed, but I would like to get the input to find out if anyone else thinks that it might make some sense to get different involvement.
Just a clarification, those are advisory boards from the North Side system. We also have an advisory board from the west side. Not the exact same composition, but there's public input.
I'm under the understanding that the Water Policy Board is a policy, sets policy all on its own. It's not an advisory board of the Board of Public Works, and the Board of Public Works has no decision-making ability as to the decisions that are made there. I don't know if
No, you're absolutely correct. But that board also has, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. But that board also has no direct influence, other than their influence, on the Public Works Board. In other words, they can tell us what they want to do and what they feel is the proper direction. And we, as you well know, because of the wastewater side, we listen very closely to that.
I'd have to definitely disagree with that.
I beg to differ with you.
Fine.
It's different than the wastewater.
It is different. It is a different composition, and it's two different ways of getting public input.
And it's not advisory.
Okay. It's not advisory.
What we have.
That's kind of the point I was trying to make.
But what we have is something very unique. And it is, I mean, it's pretty much unmatched in this area, in this state. Doesn't mean we can't make it better. But I do want to go back to, let's understand what our obligations are. And basically, they're financial, and they're huge.
We have a number of,
I didn't know you were the first one to speak, but now that you've opened it up, that echoing, that was the motion. There's a few things that I've thought of, and the first thing that jumps out at me, because the make of the county commission board has decreased in numbers, I don't know if the thought has been there to decrease the size of this board. Because right now, every commissioner does not have a seat on this board, but with the decrease of the commissioners, those two boards are going to look identical, except for the drain commissioner. So that was my thought. That's one thought that I throw out there to you, if that discussion came into play to decrease the numbers of this board. I don't have a preference one way or another, but if you choose to change the makeup of the board, and I believe the Water Policy Board, I've attended many meetings, I believe it runs like a fit glove. I mean, it runs very, very well. It's not taking, I don't know if your fear is that it's going to take away all of your ability or your voting authority or any of that. I don't know where the understanding is, why there's a discretionary approach to even talking about it, but I think that if the makeup was similar to the Water Policy Board, I really feel that it could work. And I feel that it's on a much larger scale, though, when you're looking at the wastewater portion to the water, because there's more townships and cities involved in the wastewater than the water portion. But my thought was, if there wasn't enough members on the board to satisfy everyone, what about taking the approach like the district library? And you take it by regional. And say a sitting supervisor would have the ability to sit on that board for a year, and within a region, you would have a rotating board seat like the district library. It's just a thought. It would still be made up of a number of commissioners along with supervisors to have that given input in decision making. You're right, some of the decisions that are made are going to go to the full board, and I don't think anyone is argumentative of that. But there are some decisions that are made, and we all know from the advisory board at the wastewater level that recommendations are made, and for the most part, the commissioners try to do your best to go with those recommendations. It doesn't always happen, but for the most part, you make an attempt to have that happen. My other thought was, and I don't know if this is the place to ask it, but we're involved in a bond out there with a couple other townships, and my thought is, I want to know if anybody's looked at refinancing that with rates, because the rate on that bond is incredible, and I don't know if that thought has been out there or if anybody's looked at it, but that may help some other entities in payment and so forth, so I just wanted to throw that out there too.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm only hearing so far, at least from you gentlemen, that there have been two problems or complaints noted. One was that there seems to be some lack of clarity as far as the bonding obligations, and it seems to me that would be easily handled. It certainly seems to me it might be something that ought to be done at least on a quarterly basis, to have a meeting with your finance director and have them explain the questions that you ask about. I don't see how that would in any way require a change of this board. But the other point that was made out that perhaps might make things better would be the addition of townships and cities who also would be involved, suffer or benefit, or both from the decisions that you make. And it seems to me that we got a room here that is mostly municipal leaders, none of whom sits on the board, but they're at this meeting. I'm assuming they could be invited to the meetings and again provide their input without actually affecting a change. One thing that I like as a citizen is I like that the fact that everyone sitting there now is an elected official and has to answer to the public for the decisions that you make. If you go to an appointed board of others, and even though they might be elected officials, they can't be removed by the citizens from boards, and I understand there's situations of that sort, but it seems to me you've got two questions. One of information, easily answered, demand your finance director make a cogent, understandable report. Certainly it seems to me it ought to be done on a quarterly basis anyway. I'm kind of shocked that it isn't. And the other, if you need input from the people who run the communities, invite them. And embarrass them if they don't show up, it seems. I don't see as how a change in the board makeup would necessitate their input.
All those things are foible, all that.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Marv, this may help a little bit. This book is basically a report that was done for the Muskegon Area Water and Sewer Authority.
You have to speak up.
This book right here is a HUD document. It was done in 1966 for the Muskegon Water and Sewer Authority. That Water and Sewer Authority was put together in 1964, and it basically was comprised of cities of North Muskegon and Roosevelt Park, and all of the urbanizing townships that we technically are serving right now through this board. Eggleston was Norton Township at that time, Muskegon Township, Lakeland Township, Newport Township. I believe the village actually came into this authority also. This report was issued and brought to that authority in 1965. During that time, the county board was the county board of supervisors. And this is a very interesting document because it has a report on water, it has a report on sewer, and it has recommendations on financing and operating. And I've gone through this particular document a number of times, and I've made sure over the years that nobody loses it because it's the only last copy. And it's been in Mr. Warner's office in his bookshelf, and I borrowed it recently to, I guess, make a point that in 1965, when this document came through, one of the recommendations was, amongst about 6 other ones, was to the formation of the Board of Public Works and a Department of Public Works as an entity that could deal with the questions that people were having. Do we work with the existing sanitary sewer systems in the city of Muskegon and Heights? Do we have our own filtration plans? I mean, all those things that are being talked about today were being talked about in the 1960s. When this report came out, the Board of Supervisors created the Board of Public Works in 1966. The result was shortly after that is that we went from a Board of Supervisors to a Board of Commissioners between 1966 and 1970, and I'm not quite sure I remember when that was. I've seen the documents before. But the net effect is that the wastewater system, which has been touted, rightfully so, over many, many years, is the greatest example of intergovernmental cooperation this county has ever pulled off. We've done some 911 issues and a few other things since then, but what we did for wastewater treatment in 1970 was huge. And it has its birthplace in here. And it went to the Board of Public Works as a mechanism by which to finance and operate that system. The point I'm bringing to the table as a result of this is that that effort worked because when it was conceived, everybody was at the table. That has not happened again since then in water discussions, in sewer discussions. In fact, we've got nothing but lawsuits and disagreements and a lot of other things over the last 30, 40 years that have been very difficult for us to get through. And many of those have left scars that have been brought from one regime to the next regime, and they are blockages to further discussions on water issues that are at our feet today and port issues that are at our feet today. That is the primary reason that I brought this element to the forefront, so that we could have some very healthy discussions to find out, since 1970, when things were doing so well, what have we done wrong as a county board or as a board of public works to lose some of that trust? What can we do to bring it back together? Does it take a reorganization of this board, which is possible under the law? Maybe not. Maybe the formation or bringing together some of the existing boards that we have right now. We have the Northside Water System that's working really well. We have the Municipal Wastewater Management Group, which was formed by the courts out of some of the lawsuits, and they work quite well with this board. We don't have a similar situation that deals with the Heights plant and water issues in Northern Shores and Fruitport. There's some links that are missing in this issue, and this discussion is really to bring that understanding back, that together all of us at the same table can make these things happen. This document is amazing when you look at what they talked about in 1966 for water, because we are building that today. It's amazing what they talked about with sanitary sewer, because we have built that today. They were going to put several treatment plants across the county and let the townships run their own systems. And those treatment plants were all located at where we call them today our access points to the 60-inch force main going out to treatment. This document has a tremendous amount of information in it. And I encourage not only the staff to look at it, but possibly the next Board of Public Works, as they are established, whoever they are, to take a look at some of this and what was going on in the 60s and the 70s that made things happen so easily. And how can we get around some of the issues that are going on today that keep being stumbling blocks for us? Right now, you've heard essentially everything I have to say about this. The challenges to everybody in this room, both on the board today, the next board, as well as the leaders that are in the seats out there. And I don't have much else to say, Mark. That's primarily what I want to take. I appreciate the opportunity to do that.
Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
I'd just like to say that as far as the makeup of the board, I think the people on the board need to have some kind of responsibility to the citizens that are represented by that board. And I do think that the county commissioners, duly elected by those citizens, do hold a good place and a good opportunity to represent those people. In my situation, Muskegon Township is one commission district, and to change the makeup of the board, I would be interested in seeing somebody like my supervisor rather than the county commissioner sit on that board. But I feel like an elected official from that municipality does hold some responsibility to the people, and that they should be on that board. Not all the districts have that same position where one municipality is represented totally by a commission district. Ours is unique in this situation, so I think in a situation where multiple municipalities are represented, I do think a county commissioner would be a perfect person to sit on that board, because he does have certain responsibilities to those people, and they can vote him out or her out as they choose if they're not represented like they want to be.
Okay. The Water Policy Board, I would take it that we're not on the hook for the city of Muskegon's bonds. We're only the people that are using are on the hook. Whereas the Public Works Board puts in the sewer system, the county is on the hook. So we have half the population of the county are not on that sewer system. But we have just borrowed money for the whole county will be liable, as in if anybody defaults on it. So the water, we're out from under. The sewer, we're not, by having that policy board. And I would like to make another suggestion too, and this was brought to my attention. The drain commissioner is we don't have to have, I believe it's non-mandated. We could go to an elected public works director, and we would save a lot of money by getting rid of the public works director we have at this point, and all the drain commissioner staff. And you would have a public works director where if we put anything in the ground, could be you could unelect him at that point, which would be a whole different idea that we could go to.
Just clarification here, did I hear you say Muskegon bonds? Was that an example that was?
It was only an example. I'm just trying to say Public Works is not liable for any bonds that you've taken for your water system. I'm certainly not saying that you're defaulting on bonds or anything like that.
Thank you.
I'm not saying anything bad about the city, but I just...
Well, I would just like to address Mr. Fisher. Just, you had obviously given this some serious thought, and you're kind of alluding to the fact that things worked better in the past. In what way and in what proposed rejiggering of this group would a new board membership address the points that you just made?
See, the maker, oh, that was the attorney.
Sorry.
The makeup of this board is not something that I'm so adamantly wanting to discuss, other than it brings into the discussion some of the other things we've been talking about, and that is the relationship between the communities and the county board. When there is discussion, and I'll use examples straight out, when we talk about regional water across the county, and we're talking about the Heights plants and the city of Muskegon's plants, there have been statements that I've had personally given to me by some of the local units, and I'm not going to embarrass or put anybody on the spot today, but basically says if the county's going to take care of it like wastewater, we don't want anything to do with it. That is a statement that cuts me to the bone, because when they say that the county takes care of it, so when the local units look at the Board of Public Works, they see the county. And it's not necessarily the county. The wisdom in going from Board of Supervisors to the Board of Commissioners, everybody represents the entire, I mean, as a drain commissioner, I represent everybody in the county on decisions that I make up here. If they don't like decisions I make up here, then I lose that on election day. Same thing with these guys from the respective areas. But yet there is still this us and you type relationship that has come about in the last 20 to 30 years. And the discussion that I'm trying to bring to the table is, what do we have to do to make it a we? If we tackle these problems and we trust each other, we can do a whole lot of neat things. But if we have to argue every time to get 14 signatures on a bond contract to operate the sewer, we're doing revenue bonds today because we can't get all 13, 14 municipal signatures on a piece of paper for a couple different reasons. But I mean, we can't get them anymore. We used to be able to get them all the time. That's where you got the Act 185 bonds. You go to the revenue bonds, and that's where some of the discussions and the questions are, is if it's not an Act 185 bond, which is covered by the full faith and credit of the municipalities, then it's a revenue bond, which is covered by the full faith and credit of the entire county. So the revenue bonds that support the majority of the last $60 to $80 million in improvements to the wastewater system, the residents in Sullivan Township who don't have a stick of sewer in there are on the hook for that through the county board, if we have a problem in running that system.
How would that change under any proposed thought?
Nothing. But the representation on the discussion of that and the trust between the communities and what the county is doing is what I'm after trying to do, whether we change it to make up in the board or whether we work to do some form of different committees that are on the floor that would work in conjunction with this board. It really does not make any difference to me, other than how do we address the situation that there is an us and you instead of a we. This brought everybody together. This is a we. We built the county wastewater. We did. Our entire community. Everybody's full faith and credit. Everybody was at the table. We built the wastewater. We haven't built anything since then.
Has there been significant public demand for the county or Public Works Board or any other board to go out and build something giant? I don't sense that there's demand for people to empower any elected official to go out and create some grand project. Is there something you've heard of?
I'm not suggesting that there is, but the funding capabilities through this board are powerful enough to provide single rates and single costs across the county for water issues that we haven't been able to achieve amongst the crowd, okay? But this board could do it if it was invited, not because they would want to. I mean, we found that out during the water wars when the county board says we're going to go do what we're going to do with water. We can't do that. We can't do anything unless we're asked. And there's a reluctance now today to ask us to do anything. And I don't know why that reluctance is. Well, I got a pretty good reason, understanding of what some of the things that happened, but the reluctance is there. We need to solve that, and we need to heal it.
I think 2 minutes are pretty well handled. If I could, I would ask you a question. It is my understanding, unless I'm wrong, that a water agreement has been forged between the city of Muskegon and Norton Shores and Freeport. Is that correct?
Well, Jay's right, that has been. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, right. So that is moving forward. And, okay. Are there any other?
Did keep Muskegon Township, in talking about, when you talk, Dave, about comfort and trust and stuff like that, I mean, I'm going to give my opinion because I always do. I think the Board of Public Works should be made up of 4 county commissioners, 2 city managers, and 2 township supervisors. I'm not saying who they should and shouldn't be, but the supervisors are comfortable with the supervisors, the city managers are comfortable with each other, and obviously the county is comfortable with each other. I mean, the supervisors and city managers might not have a very good comfort level with the county commissioners. I mean, I know who they all are, but I don't really know any of them. And whether I like them, trust them, that of course is up in the air also. So I mean, but in working with each other, on a regular basis at the township level and at the city level, when something comes for a vote, it's easy for us to go to somebody we work with and are familiar with on a regular basis than to go to somebody we don't really know and ask these questions and feel comfortable with the answers we're going to get or not get from them. So I just want to give my opinion.
Is there anyone else?
Sam Sanamore for the township. God's country, you're right. You're allowed in. Okay, I have 3 quick points. Number 1, Fisher's old like me, and when he mentions 1966, at that time I was chasing Scott Plummer's sister-in-law all around the neighborhood. I wasn't thinking about any wastewater. Number 2, Marv, let me just clarify something with you. If tomorrow the Northside Water Board says we're going to paint all of our water meters pink, and it's going to cost $1,000 for the water, and we vote that with 4 county commissioners and 4 township supervisors, is there any way this board can stop that activity in your mind?
No, but they would not pay for it necessarily. But they couldn't.
That would slow it down.
I mean, that's the bottom line. They wouldn't take. I mean, you'd have to go to the county board to get their permission to do it. But you can choose.
Doesn't it go through this board first?
It normally does as procedure. But
Normally does, don't you mean normally? Yes or no? Kind of help me out.
All revenue issues
That's
go
right.
to the county board.
They don't stop here.
No.
You would kick that baby upstairs, is that what you would do?
All revenue issues that are cited by the county board.
So automatically, all revenue issues go to the county board. You guys don't even touch them, talk about them, any activity.
We may give them our opinion. But the final vote comes on the county board. All right, maybe I'm not explaining, let John explain it too.
I'm not going to try to explain it, but the answer is that's not correct, in my opinion. The board, the DPW board paints, has contracts that are involving the municipalities and the county, and we paint, I think we paint and those are approved, and most of them go to the county board, at least in my recollection. Paint water towers, make repairs.
If you'd like, if you'd like
to know, or a little more information, we have a director in both water and wastewater. They have schedules and plans that they put into the budget the previous year to, they're scheduling that needs painting or needs whatever. And if you choose to do it at some time other than when the professionals think it should be done, then it pulls out of the mix and you have to get like special permission to do it. If it's done on a normal rate, the professionals determine that's what they do, what needs to be done.
sometimes our water towers get hit by low-flying aircraft, and we have to paint them out of cycle. If we did that and voted for that, would this board ever see that request for revenue? Not budgeted item.
I would think it would come here, and I would think we would refer to staff, and with staff would
here's my answer.
If at any time it comes out of the general fund, the county's general fund, it goes to the full county board. If it comes out of the public works enterprise fund or the fund of the municipality, it goes to public works.
Would we know that, John, which one it was from? You would know. Yes. So it stops here. Normal stuff we do. Anything for water tower would stop. And they could say yay or nay? Yeah. Or they could say we're paying for it or we're not. So truly we're an advisory. Let me go back to the original question. Truly we're nothing but an advisory board to you to say we want this tower painted out of cycle, out of budget or whatever, coming out of our fund, John's fund, and you say yay or nay.
That would be my opinion. I'll let Ted answer.
Well, that's not how you answered it, sir. I'm just helping you out here, actually.
Typically presented with a recommendation. Frankly, I don't recall a recommendation ever being denied. I would be inclined to suggest that
That's not really my point, to be honest with you. I'm a little confused that you guys are this confused on where the buck stops. And this is truly buck, and there's no pun intended. Some of you are less confused than others. Ms. Hammerson said, this kind of goes here and this kind of goes here, and I think she's got the right idea, and John's right behind her nodding his head. So, his head. I think we got to get a grasp on that a little closer. Here's number one. Let me get really over to where I was really going, is kind of in Dave's thing. I don't know what the number spread is. Northside Water Policy Board, the advisory committee on water, works quite well. It's not that we agree on every topic that comes up there, but it's not an automatic split between county commissioner and township every vote. It's not that way. It truly is taking experienced members. Commissioner Snyder has been very, very, very helpful in that, and laying it out and saying, here's what we have. And in my mind, we made kind of a big decision with an agreement with North Muskegon and Roosevelt Park that I don't know if you guys can overturn or not, but we made what we thought was a pretty big decision based on some interesting discussions that we had. Not all the township people agreed with each other, nor did all the county people agree with each other. But that's, you know, it was done in an open forum and so forth. And my last thought is, Mr. Riley, it's much more interesting on topics like this to sit on that side of the table than it is this side of the table as far as being participating. So thank you very much.
I'd just like to make one other observation, and that is that I think that we've made some strides in trying to put forth a public face that among all of the entities in this community, we can cooperate. I'd like to see that continue. It's my strong belief that to the extent that we can foster that, and that we can have increased cooperation among a multiplicity of governmental agencies and a multiplicity of school districts and all of these other agencies that we have, that we make ourselves much more attractive from an economic development standpoint in the future of trying to secure economic development in this community. And my only thought when I made the motion again was to try to have the discussion, to somehow try to determine whether or not there might be interest in the, on the part of the municipalities, whatever they may be they city, township, or whoever, in trying to have more input into a common cause of keeping this county moving forward. And if it's a matter of changing the makeup of the Department of Public Works, my thought was, completely separate from Mr. Fisher, that it was worthwhile having the discussion.
I'd like to agree and disagree with Mr. Fisher. I think there's a lot more fleet going on than us. Okay, and it's never going to be perfect, and I do agree that it's something we should strive for. And I appreciate you bringing that. I'm hoping before we leave here, at least we could give a date or a time where all the finances, including the municipalities that are connected to us, can be reviewed. It doesn't have to be like but I surely want that understanding. I hope I'm honest. DPW for next door.
They're open to it.
Yeah, I know it is, but I'd like to review it. We've got, this is one of many, many things that we do. I'd like to have a refresher, please. I need that. So I don't have it right here. But I do want to agree with Deb and have that looked at the same time. Is there maybe a combination of these that would make it more attractive to refinance? Maybe not. Maybe that's a township. Maybe we should be leading the townships with the expertise on staff to be doing some of these things. But let's take a look. And I think, we're business. We got to operate like that. And finances right now, I want to know everybody is. And if we could get that done someday, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I would like to see that, make sure it's an elected board. When we borrow money, is through the good faith of the county, is the people just on the system liable for that, or is the whole county liable?
Every citizen on the
So,
county.
so if we,
Alan, let me explain something. It's very complicated, and again, I can't give you the exact ways, but I do know as a fact how we get there, I don't know. Buying with the size and wealth of the county gets a lower interest rate than an individual unit of government would get on its own. So everyone has that option, if they choose. But most people would rather pay less interest.
I agree with you, but the nice thing about me being out here is you have one person that doesn't, well, I have a little bit of sewer system, but very, very little. So when I speak for a lot of people who maybe don't want the good faith of their property on this bond. I mean, it says right here, this new, whether it's this board or a new board, it says right here, we can acquire a water system. And buy this is to acquire a water system within one or more areas in the county and to improve, enlarge, extend, operate, and maintain the system. So that means, let's say, if we were to buy any one of these water systems, the whole county's liable. So that's why I think it's good that we have a certain amount of elected officials that aren't necessarily in the water or sewer system, because you are putting my good faith up too. All them farmers, up through all the land, all these areas, we are also involved in this.
I think it's important that you remember that we're unelected, and citizens in some form or another elect their representative. Now, the same issues you're bringing up, I've heard in coffee shops, I'm sure everybody else is, airport, locator, bus system. I mean, any large municipal system has those in favor of it and opposed to it. And so, and since it may not be impossible, it's very difficult to get the entire citizenry to understand all of the intricacies of a specific system. Hopefully the professionals can tell us that aren't professionals in that. And that's how we're given the right to vote for those, and if you vote wrong, they take you away.
Well, that's right, because I'm an elected official here, the same with the supervisors. If you fill up full supervisors, it's not bad. Someone can get voted out, but that still doesn't speak for Ravenna, who property taxes are gonna go up if we fail on a bond.
Just so that here's the gist of it. If you talk about wastewater, okay, just wastewater operations, we have a number of bonds. I can't remember how many bonds we got out there. There's a number of them in private rate. Only one of them is an Act 185. The rest of them are all revenue bonds. That 185 bond is the only one that has the full faith and credit by contract of just the municipal users who are part of the wastewater system. All the rest of the revenue bonds, by action of the full board, has pledged the full faith and credit of everybody in the county, including Ravenna, Holden, and everybody else that does not have sewer. Now, any one of the individual communities who have asked this board by resolution to finance their water or sewer projects, they have pledged the full faith and credit of only their taxpayers in their township. If they can't do that, then the full board who has approved that bond has the secondary issue. But the first line of defense is their contract that pledges their township and their city. That's the simple way of who owes what.
Okay. I'm not sure I like you putting my money, my property.
I didn't, you did.
Well, I didn't, and I don't want you to either, so it's great. That's what I'm saying, that's why, you know, at least you had one voice here saying, well, we had 2 or 3 voices here that have a lot of property that are not run with, that are not so much on the system, and we have to speak for these other people too. We're not, only the people using it are not the only people that are tied into this system. There's a lot of people tied into this. Everybody's tied into it.
Could I just ask a quick question? Is there a statutory or in some other manner maximum to the number of people can be on the board? Because it seems to me that they keep...
Yes.
Okay, but they keep up with a good idea of addition. It seems like there's an interest in cities and maybe townships of being added to the board, but I know one... But, oh, it is a state issue, so you only have a certain number that you can put on. Okay, so you'd have to replace commissioners, county commissioners, with somebody else.
Elected commissioners for an area with non-elected. They may be elected, that's part of the rule, but there's no guarantee what they'd be elected to take the place of the county commission.
Thank you. Close enough.
And I've kind of let everything get away here. We've kind of done B and C together. Is there anybody who'd like to do one more voice on either discussion or discussion? I'm sorry, Dave.
I just want to say one more thing, Marv. I appreciate the fact that you guys let this be a nice open discussion amongst everybody in the room. I do really appreciate it. Everybody got a chance to talk and interact and give their opinion. I appreciate it. Thank you.
If not, we'll go to D, which is there any other comment on a new subject? Is there something else we should discuss a bit longer?
I just want to make sure one of our meetings, we get that refresher course. Next, so whatever we can do, trouble for the board. Thank you.
Yeah, it makes sense to get, the bonds listed, the expiration dates, and everything else. We've done that regularly, so.
Could I ask, would that be, no matter what we bond, does it always have to go to the full board no matter what? Or can just do it, so it still ends up at the full board?
Yes. Usually it's done for water credit. They do there's a contract. If it's a limited municipality, that's approved by the public board and also.
I guess that's what I'm asking. So we would still have to say, no matter what area it was, in the end.
One last thing, so it's your intention now to do what?
Yeah, Christmas.
Yeah, go home, buy me a pizza. Get one of those good I mean, this board gets elected and nominated by the full board, is that what happens?
That's what happens, unless something changes, the normal procedure that had been in place since 1960, whatever, was that the Board of Commissioners elects a chairman. That chairman nominates, and it's up until now, the commissioners for this board. Then the full board votes it up or down. If they vote it down, then
So we should take our story to the full board now, if we're interested in having representation, say, for the township.
well, I will let the full board chairman.
Well, I see him over there, so I can corner him before he gets.
Excuse me, Sam, I really don't need all these people to board me.
Oh. Right.
I think our normal system is, if I can make an analogy to a sports team, maybe that's not a good one, but a sports team has a coach.
It's not the Lions.
Well, a sports team has a coach which actually runs the team and makes things happen, and pretty much has, on operational things, has the last word. In our case, we all defer to Ms. Hamilton.
I'm afraid of her also, so.
Well, yes. So, there is a procedure to change things, and we have procedures for everything. They start in a committee, they go through the committee, through the board. First, they start with Ms. Hamilton. Everything should start here. If there's a question, we have to go to her. If there's an issue, we have to talk to her. She will then get the normal department head who's involved. They'll take a discussion. If they can handle it, they handle it. If they find for some reason that needs to go beyond that, it goes to a committee. It has to go beyond that, it goes to the board again. And so there's a procedure in place to handle that.
Thank you for your time, we do appreciate it.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you for coming. Motion to made the second.
I was going to drink it.